A child undergoes several changes as they grow up. From the moment he comes out of his mother's womb, up until he can stand on his own and become independent. Development is a progress or an advancement, whether in physical, social, emotional, or mental state of a person. In stages of human development, it is the variation of needs, behavior, experiences, and capabilities of a person in each different age period. And according to John Sondrock, an author and a professor of psychology in the School of Behavioral and Brain Science in UT Dallas, there are 8 stages of development, shortly named as PAIMA-AMLA, which stands for prenatal period, infancy, early childhood, middle and late childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood. Of course, at each stage of development, there is an expected certain task that every individual needs to achieve that corresponds to the stages of development. As stated by Robert Havighurst, a chemist, physicist, educator, and expert on human development and aging, he defines developmental tasks as
one that rises at or about a certain period in our lives, successful achievement of which leads to happiness and success with later tasks, while failure leads to unhappiness, disapproval by society, and difficulty with later tasks.
Prenatal period, from conception to birth. It involves tremendous growth, from a single cell to an organism complete with brain and behavioral capabilities. Prenatal development is the process that occurs during the 40 weeks prior to the birth of a child and is heavily influenced by genetics. Gestation is the development before birth. Gestation has 3 stages. The first one is the germinal stage. The germinal stage that occurs from conception until 2 weeks. It begins with fertilization in a fallopian tube and ends with implantation in the uterus. It is when the sperm and egg cell unite in one of the 2 fallopian tubes. And when sperm fertilizes an egg, the fertilized egg is called a zygote. Just a few hours after conception, the single-celled zygote begins making a journey down the fallopian tube to the uterus. The second one is the embryonic stage. The embryonic stage lasts from implantation, which is 2 weeks, until week 8 of pregnancy. After the zygote divides for about 7 to 10 days and has 150 cells, it travels down the fallopian tubes and implants itself in the lining of the uterus. Upon implantation, this multicellular organism is called an embryo. Now blood vessels grow, forming the placenta. The placenta is a structure connected to the uterus that provides nourishment and oxygen from the woman's body to the developing embryo through the umbilical cord. During the embryonic stage, the embryo becomes not only bigger but also much more complex. In this stage, also the organs begin to develop. The third and last one is the fetal stage. The fetal stage lasts from week 9 until birth, usually between 38 and 40 weeks. When the organism is about 9 weeks old, the embryo is called a fetus. At this stage, the fetus is about the size of a kidney bean and begins to take on the recognizable form of a human being. Between 9 and 12 weeks, reflexes begin to appear and the arm and legs start to move. During the same time, the sex organs begin to differentiate. At about 16 weeks, the fetus is approximately 4.5 inches long. Fingers and toes are fully developed and fingerprints are visible. By the time the fetus reaches the 6th month of development, or 24 weeks, it weighs up to 1.4 pounds. Hearing has developed, so the fetus can respond to sounds. The internal organs, including the lungs, heart, stomach, and intestines have formed enough that a fetus born prematurely at this point has a chance to survive outside of the womb. Throughout the fetal stage, the brain continues to grow and develop, nearly doubling in size from week 16 to 28. Brain growth during this period allows the fetus to develop new behaviors. The cerebral cortex grows larger, and the fetus spends more hours awake. The fetus moves with more coordination, indicating more neural connections within the brain. The nervous system is controlling more bodily functions, and even personality begins to emerge in utero. By 28 weeks, thalamic brain connections form, which mediate sensory input. The fetus can distinguish between voices and can remember songs and certain sounds after birth. The fetus becomes sensitive to light as well. Growth begins to slow around 30 to 32 weeks, but small changes continue until birth. Around 36 weeks, the fetus is almost ready for birth. It weighs about 6 pounds and is about 18.5 inches long. And by week 37, all of the fetus organ systems are developed enough that it could survive outside the uterus without many of the risks associated with premature birth. The fetus continues to gain weight and grow in length until approximately 40 weeks. By then, the fetus has very little room to move around and birth becomes imminent. During the fetal stage, the brain develops and the body adds size and weight until the fetus reaches full-term development. This stage is marked by amazing change and growth. Infancy, from birth to 2 years. It is a time of extreme dependence on adults. Many psychological activities are just beginning, such as learning of language, symbolic thought, sensory motor coordination, and social learning. The development of motor skills. Gross motor skills, use of large muscles such as lifting their heads, grabbing things off the cabinet, and chasing the ball. Fine motor skills, a refined use of the small muscles such as writing, drawing, and buttoning. Lap baby. During the baby's first year, parents always take and carry him or her and sit the baby on their lap. Toddler. During the baby's second year of life, language development begins. First is the hollow phrases or the one-word utterances such as mama, dada, papa, and so on. The second one is the telegraphic speech or the two-word, three-word utterances with a rudimentary syntax but with articles and preposition missing, such as baby chair, teddy give, and doggy sleep. According to Noam Chomsky, an American linguist, there is a metaphorical organ that is responsible for language learning, and that is called language acquisition device or LAD, a theory proposed to explain how an infant or a child acquire, learn, understand, and produce language quickly. Formative years are the first 3 years in human development. 2/3 of our formative years belong to infancy. In formative years, the development of attachment theory begins, according to Dr. John Bowlby, a British psychologist. He defined attachment as a lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. His ethological theory of attachment suggests that infants have an innate need to form an attachment band with a caregiver or an emotional band and closeness to a specific figure. Temperament. It is how a child responds emotionally to objects, events, and people. Separation anxiety. It is the situations or objects often elicit fear responses. Early childhood, 3 to 5 years. In this stage, young children learn to become more self-sufficient and to care for themselves. They develop school readiness skills and spending many hours in play with peers. Gross motor development, movement with the use of large groups of muscles in their arms and legs. It has 3 skills. Locomotor skills are the ability to move from one place to another. These skills include rolling, balancing, sliding, jogging, running, leaping, jumping, hopping, dodging, galloping, and skipping. Non-locomotor skills. No transferring involvement. The child retains or stays in place, such as bending, stretching, and turning. Manipulative skills. From the word manipulate, one in which a child handles an object with the hands, feet, or other body parts. Involve projecting and receiving objects such as throwing, striking, and bouncing. Early childhood in the views of parents. The child being the problem, the troublesome because of their behavior, and the toy age because they always want to play toys. In the views of educators, they describe this as a preschool age, letting them study as preschool or kindergarten before entering grade 1. In the views of psychologists, they describe the child for having group of friends or the pregame. The exploratory, let them explore for the development of their intelligence and the questioning age. In the early childhood also shows the stages of drawing by Victor Lowenfeld, an Austrian educator. The first stage is the scribbling stage. Begins with zigzag lines, which later becomes circular markings. The second stage is the pre-schematic stage. Drawings usually comprised of a prominent head with basic elements. The third stage is the schematic stage. More elaborate scenes are depicted, such as trees, houses, and mountains. Early childhood also develops fast mapping, a process by which children absorb the meaning of a new word after hearing it once or twice in conversation. Theory of mind refers to individuals' thoughts about how mental processes work. The child knows he or she has a mind. In early childhood, also exhibit stages of play by Mildred Wharton, an American sociologist. The first one is an occupied play. Children are not playing, but directs his attention on anything that interests him. Onlooker play. Children watch others play and are talking to them, but is not involved. Solitary play. Playing toys with themselves. Parallel play. Children play beside and not with each other. Associative play. Children play and interact with others, but no task, assignment, rules, and organization are agreed upon. Cooperative play. Children play with others, bound upon by some agreed rules and roles. Early childhood also shows caregiving styles or parenting styles by Diana Baumrind, clinical psychologist. Responsiveness is characterized by how warm, caring, and respectful the parent to the child. Demandingness involves discipline and confrontation strategies. The 4 caregiving styles. Number 1. Authoritative is a parenting style characterized by high responsiveness and high demands. Authoritative parents are responsive to the child's emotional needs while having high standards. They set limits and are very consistent in enforcing boundaries. Children with this parenting style grow safe and secure, takes responsibility for his or her actions, good self-control, realistic view of oneself, and empathy. Number 2. Authoritarian or disciplinarian is a parenting style characterized by high demands and low responsiveness. Parents with an authoritarian style have very high expectations with the children, yet provide very little in the way of feedback and nurturing. Mistakes tend to be punished harshly. Children with this parenting style grow with aggressive behavior, poor self-control, and poor self-esteem. Number 3. Permissive or indulgent is a type of parenting style characterized by low demands with high responsiveness. Permissive parents tend to be very loving, yet provide few guidelines and rules. These parents do not expect mature behavior from their children and often seem more like a friend than a parental figure. Children with this parenting style grow with difficulty in controlling his or her impulses, dependent, demanding on caregivers, easily gives up on a task, rebellious, inadequate, and emotional control. Number 4. Neglectful or uninvolved is a parenting style characterized by a lack of responsiveness to a child's need. Uninvolved parents make few to no demands of their children, and they are often indifferent, dismissive, or even completely neglectful. Children with this parenting style grow disobedient, demanding, low in self-control, low in tolerance for frustration, and lacking for long-term goals.
Middle and late childhood, from 6 to 12 years. In middle and late childhood, the fundamental skills of 3 R's are mastered. 3 R's stand for reading, writing, and arithmetic. In this stage, the child is formally exposed to the larger world and its culture. Achievements such as having perfect or high scores in quizzes or exams, right answers in recitation, having honor, and many more, it becomes the central theme of the child's world, and self-control increases. The skills of late childhood can be categorized roughly into 4 groups. The first one is the self-help skills, or the ability of the child to guide and aid himself or herself without the help of the parents or the caregiver. The second one is the social help skills, or the ability of the child to socialize and make friends without the help of adults. The third one is the school skills, or the ability of the child to study on his or her own. And lastly is the play skills, or knowing a lot of games to play. Middle and late childhood, in the views of parents, the child being the troublesome, sloppy, and involved in quarrelsome age. In the views of educators, they are elementary age, and in the views of psychologists, they are in the age of conformity and creativity, and having a group of friends, or in the gang age. Adolescence, from 13 to 18 years. This stage begins with rapid physical changes, dramatic gains in height and weight, changes in body contour, and the development of sexual characteristics, such as enlargement of the breast, development of the pubic hair and facial hair, and deepening of the voice. Pursuit of independence and identity are prominent. In adolescence, thought is more logical, abstract, and idealistic. More time is spent outside of the family. Puberty is the onset of sexual maturity. Gonads are the male and female primary reproductive organs, testes in males and ovaries in females, to initiate a growth spurt. Testosterone, a hormone responsible for the growth of the testes and the scrotum, penis and first pubic hair, the capacity for the ejaculation or spermage, the growth spurt, voice change, facial hair development or beard growth, and continuing growth of pubic hair. Estrogen, a hormone responsible for the beginning of breast enlargement, the appearance of pubic hair, the widening of the hips, a growth spurt, and menarche, or first menstruation. In adolescence, there are phases of identity status, according to James Marshall, a clinical and developmental psychologist. The first one is the identity foreclosure, or an adolescent who is a follower, finding security in others, not in his or herself. The second one is the moratorium, or an adolescent searcher. The third one is the identity achiever, the adolescent fully finds himself or herself. And the last one is the identity diffusion, an adolescent failing to find himself or herself. Early adulthood, from 19 to 29 years old. It is a time of establishing personal and economic independence, career development, selecting a mate, learning to live with someone in an intimate way, starting a family, and rearing children. A problem age, and one of the emotional tension, a time of social isolation, a time of commitment, and then a dependency of value changes of creativity and of adjustment to a new life pattern. Middle adulthood, from 30 to 60 years, a time of expanding personal and social involvement and responsibility, assisting the next generation in becoming competent and mature individuals,
reaching and maintaining satisfaction in a career. Late adulthood, from 61 years and above, having double citizenship, Filipino and senior citizenship. A time for adjustment to decreasing strength and health. A life review or reminiscing past memories, retirement, and adjustment to new social roles. Life is a valuable blessing lent by our Almighty God, and it's not just the existence of life He conferred to us. He gave us the ability to grow and develop our body and mind from being a single cell to the person we are today, a continuous process of development, growth, and maturity. In life, we follow different stages and tasks essential for us to know that we are a normal being from the moment we are born. It is necessary to learn all the stages, tasks, skills, and abilities that we need to acquire for us to be knowledgeable and aware of our roles and career. Every stage of development is a milestone, an achievement of life, a change, a road to progress, and a stairway to success. Success by means of knowing your purpose, value, and skills. And the stages of development and developmental task is an aid to conquer yourself and your life.